Okay, so hi and welcome everyone. We are about to start, and my name is Clarke. I will do some introduction later on as well, and you will get to know me during this 30 to 45 minute session. I think we will leave some time for lunch, but let's see how it goes. So with that said, we do have some slides from our sponsors that we should introduce, and I'm actually going here. It's going to be fun to actually attend a real live conference. I'm bored of sitting home now, so I hope I will see a lot of you over there at that time. And there's also other sponsors as well that we would like to say thank you to at this time. And with that, let's kick off this presentation. So I'm not sure if you saw the intro slide because of the technical difficulties that we had, but what we usually do is to set up a template, or actually add this set to the company template. And with that, everyone can add those intro slides to their presentations. So you could basically set up like a presentation or template for live audiences, and you could have a separate one for Teams meetings and things like that, with different slide sets and different presentation tips in them. And while actually doing that, it's actually a great idea to add some training materials into that, because it might be hard sometimes to be a good presenter. And I'm presenting at a lot of events. I'm presenting on workshops for customers, for like IT boards and those kind of things. And you get better at time, but there's a lot into making a good presentation. And there's actually loads of things that we could do to help our staff to become better presenters, especially with regards to Teams meetings and how to do them. And this presentation will give a lot of those kind of tips during the presentation. So this one, and since I'm not sure that you actually saw this, what we actually do is add these kind of slide sets to the intro of the presentation. And 5 minutes before, we actually start the presentation and set it to like full screen mode. And then we have this automatic advanced of slides after like 30 seconds to 1 minute or something. You can actually roll through the welcoming slides automatically before the presentation is about to start. With regards to the technical difficulties we had when we started, I'm actually just gonna log on to my phone to make sure that I'm being heard as I should. And I am, so just leave that on the side. And that's actually one bonus tips that I have when you're doing live events, because you're presenting and you could have like your second device as a companion device to make sure that everything looks okay from the other side, so that you don't have to ask people like, can you see this? Can you see my presentation? Can you hear me fine? And those kind of things. So if you have your cell phone or an iPad or anything, log on to that one as well to make sure that you are being seen and heard. Okay. And I should obviously done that before the presentation, but that's just a bonus tips. So with regards to this one, you see that we have automatic slide advanced configured on the intro slides, and they were rolling like 5 minutes before this presentation started. And this could be like if you have external customer meetings, you could take this these 5 minutes before meeting starts to have like your company presentation and actually use it as a ad space, or for internal meetings, use it as an internal training space where we can have our internal marketing and communication with regards to end user training, for example. So that's basically what we try to do when we roll out teams in huge organizations. If you want my slide set, you could always ping me on my Teams address. It's right here. I will have it at the end as well. And if you want a presentation, just ping me on Teams. This Teams address is obviously also Amish compatible, so it works with legacy systems as emails as well. But I get too many emails, so please ping me on Teams, and I will send you the presentation. So the next tip, and especially if you're new to Teams or if your users are new to Teams, set up a playground and let people play around, because when we have these formal training sessions, people get scared and they usually don't want to voice up, and especially if you are in like the senior leadership team and you have a mixed audience, it's not often that the CEO wants to burst in and saying like, hey, I don't understand how you share your screen, this stupid system. He's gonna sit there by himself or her, quiet and wondering, and then when the presentation comes up, it's gonna be awkward because the one doesn't know how to share their screen. So setting up a team playground and adding content into that playground with your tips and tricks is actually a great thing to do. And in there you could use the Teams features or Office 365 features like booking, for example, to schedule internal support hours or internal support calls or internal training calls. So by using booking, you can set up like your own calendar and let that one be bookable to have people book training events, for example, with you as their presentation coach or Teams meeting technical support staff or whatever. So basically use the tools that are given to you in Office 365 to make your meetings better, and set up a playground so that people can play around in their own pace and test around. And this is the space where they don't really have to think about if they do something wrong, for example. The next one is to set up a Teams training camp. And remember when we were kids and joined the soccer school or a soccer team or whatever sport we actually practice? At least for me and most of my friends, we played soccer or some other sports, and we used to train like 3, 4, 5 days a week. But nowadays, when we do work in a professional life, we are expected to know the tools that are given to us. And we are expected to take the training class that are given to us at 8 a.m. on a Sunday or any other day that we probably can't make it to, and then to be at that hour and learn the tool, and basically that's it. Or basically we get some other videos that we are supposed to look at, or a document that we are supposed to read, or an email with information. But setting up training camps is actually spaces where you do get training consistently of the tools that we are supposed to use. And it's not only tools like how do I use the button to present my screen and those kind of things. It's more like presentation coaching of targeted audiences, for example. So by listing out looking at the reports in Teams, for example, to find out who are my top presenters, you could set up a scheduled bootcamp for those top presenters and give them like an external speaking coach or external PowerPoint presentation or whatsoever. And you could also target like PowerPoint training or assistance to those users. And with regards to this, we could also have some other tools that you saw there. So another tip, get interactive. And basically, when I planned this session, I obviously thought that this was a normal Teams meeting where you could unmute. So in this case, what I mean with get interactive is to actually type your questions and or your best Teams tips in the chat. And also while doing that, if you're on a Windows machine, use the Windows and dot together to open up the emoji bar. Because when you are in a Teams meeting and there start to be like chats and people start to do chats, and in there's multiple chats, and while you're doing the presentation, it's kind of hard to actually get a feeling of what they're chatting about when you do the presentation. But by using emojis in there, for example, the hand raising emoji or something, it gets a lot easier to the presenter when they browse through the chat. If they see like a big question mark in red or the hand raising emoji or any other emoji in there, to actually find out that this is actually a question that someone have asked, rather than just random chats and comments. So what I also mean with this slide, and why I have it in the middle of the presentation, is basically because it might be good if you do a PowerPoint presentation to add and get interactive slide into the middle of it. So just take a break and let people talk about the content and drink some water, for example. And by the way, if you do those automatic slide transitions, you should probably remove them from the other slides so that it doesn't change in the middle of your presentation with automatic. So with that, rehearse with the presenter coach, or rehearse, or just rehearse in front of the mirror. Actually, the presentation coach is better than mirror because it gives you tips and tricks of how your pace is, if you're saying a lot of or whatever fill out words that you use. It also gives you some tips of the phrasing of the words that you say, basically. And you get this nice report after your presentation. And you don't get that from the mirror, but you do get to look how you look like when you do the presentation. This presentation coach is something that you could open up from PowerPoint web app. So if you upload your presentation into OneDrive, for example, and open it up in there, you would actually be able to start it by selecting slideshow tab and then select rehearse with coach. And then you do the presentation as you normally would do. And after that, you will see this awesome report. And usually I would ask someone if they have used this before at this time. And I hope that you have, or that you will. My next tip with regards to interactivity is to master the whiteboard. And this is also something that you probably don't want to do in the middle of your presentation for the first time. So this is actually where it gets important to have those kind of boot camps and training camps, or just training sessions to let people play around with these kind of things and see how it works to be able to master it. And while setting that up, instead of just having like a normal training session where you go through and show how this is used, what I mean with these boot camps is that you tell the audience to actually use this while coaching them to do it, instead of just showing it to them. And basically that's one part of your multi-training strategy, where you mix it up with boot camps, trainings, videos, these kind of sessions, emails, and multiple training materials that you do use, I hope. But the whiteboard is a great tool, and basically I've started to using it more and more, and obviously I'm coming from OneNote, and OneNote is still one of the best tools in my toolbox, but I do use whiteboard in meetings more and more, and especially if you have like a Surface Hub at the office, or if you have audiences that are sitting on like Surface computers, they could all be in the same whiteboard at the same time. And even now with like the COVID situation where everyone sits at home, one thing that we have seen when we have done like evaluation with our customers with regards to how they find their home working situation, and when we ask like what tools do you actually miss out on, whiteboard is one of the top requested tools. So we have set up like special training sessions with just regards to using the whiteboard, and so make sure to try it out. And you could try it out from inside Teams, as shown in the GIF here, or just download it from the Windows store and open it up and start using it in Windows when not in a meeting, for example, or from the waffle bar inside Office 365 as well. So basically, if you're gonna remember one thing, OneNote has always been my top tool, and now whiteboard is my second top tool, I guess, except for Teams. That's everyone's top tool, right? So I actually touched on this one before, and using emojis, and some people actually hate them and some people actually love them. But with regards to browsing through a chat history while at the same time doing a presentation, it actually helps out a lot if I see that raised hand, for example, or if I see a question mark somewhere, or just any of the other emojis. One example, especially with like new organizations into Teams where they haven't really figured out the notification settings after a meeting, and people start to say thank you for the meeting, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and people that have their meeting in the calendar but haven't figured out how to set the notifications, they start to see all these kind of notifications saying thank you for the meeting that they didn't even attended. So by just using like the thumbs up button, for example, or by using an emoji saying thumbs up instead of all these kind of thank yous, is actually a great way of saying thank you after a meeting. And that obviously leads into notifications. I do not have a slide for that, but that's obviously something that you should add to your training sessions and training materials to just make sure that people set their individual notifications to fit their needs, and especially the notifications with regards to meetings that you don't attend is a nice tip. I often personally don't want to give recommendations on like exactly how you should set your notifications, because it's so individual, and by that I mean that these kind of settings are personal. For me, for example, I have my phone to silence, but other people, they don't want to have their phone on silence. They want it to have like a personal ringtone for everyone that calls them. So, or some people set the phone to vibration, for example. But with regards to my working style, I want it to be entirely silent. And if someone wants to reach me in Teams, not my cell phone or email, for example. So that's why I personally don't give recommendations on how to set and configure the notifications, but it's a must do to train people on how to open the settings and go in and change it to fit their needs. And with regards to that, Another setting that you should probably master is the meeting options. And when you schedule a meeting and when you open up that meeting in Outlook, for example, you will find a link saying like meeting options in the Outlook bookings, where you could set these settings. And right now it's not much you can do in here, but there are some things that you should probably set with regards to who can bypass the lobby. And if you want it to be like an open meeting where you might not attend for the first 30 minutes, but you want an external guest to be able to start the meetings, for example, you could set it to be open for everyone. And you could also set it to who can present. And basically what we have seen from working with schools now during the COVID situation is like students kicking out the teacher from the meeting, students inviting other students that are not even in the class or even in the school into the meetings, then taking over the chats, kicking out the teachers and taking over the meetings. And those kind of things were actually quite annoying during the first weeks of COVID, when everyone was supposed to do homeschooling and things like that. So basically we did a lot of like training materials on these kind of settings, and also with regards to schools specifically to the policy packages in the Teams admin centers, where you can set different policies for students and different policies for teachers. That can obviously also be good with regards to other organizations as well. So using the uphill key is one of my favorite keys, especially in Teams where it's not so easy to move around between different things. So using this key in the chat window that you see on top of your Teams client, and actually doing that in the middle of a meeting and saying, for example, uphill and chat, and then typing a name and then typing the message that you want to send and then hitting enter, instead of just leaving focus of the meeting, browsing into chat, trying to find the person that you want to send a message to, then writing the message, then seeing some other notification, stealing your focus from the meeting or whatever team or document that you are in. So by just using this key instead of like browsing through everything, it's going to save you loads of time. If you don't like to use this, or if you don't understand the Haxor or human language of uphill and forget about it, the browsing buttons that you have in the top left corner will move you backwards and forwards if you do want to shift focus from, let's say, this meeting, for example. Another favorite in here is the go to. So I type uphill go to, and then the channel or team that I want to move over to, instead of just browsing through the list of hundreds of teams or how many you might have. So just uphill go to and the channel or the team. If you type uphill and then keys, you will see all the keys that are in here and all the other shortcuts that you can take. So there are multiple shortcuts that I think you should learn, especially if you want to be a power user in Teams. So just typing uphill keys will take you to this screen where you will see all those shortcuts. And especially the help one, and I will come back to that one later on as well. But for example, Control 7 open up Planner. or control 1 activity, and so forth. Control Shift 1, move selected team up. Yeah. With regards to shortcuts, everyone loves shortcuts, right? And this is basically a tip for like the owners of teams and the IT persons of this session. So try to keep this in mind, that when we design a thing, we might think that we are smart to design it like this, but the users will take the shortcut. And this comes in mind when designing teams and channel and sites and hubs in SharePoint and those kind of things. So always try to put yourself in the user's perspective with regards to design and how you want to design things. And you might think that it's smart to start a team and then add like 20 channels to that. And then you will end up with everyone sending everything in the general channel anyhow. And these kind of channels just get outdated and not even looked at, and then moved into the shadows. So with that in mind, try to figure out like what's the actual topics that are discussed in the general channel. And then from those topics, move out into channels. Or even from those topics and files that are being used and worked on, move out into new teams or expand into channels. And then connect things with SharePoint hubs, for example, if you're starting to use the SharePoint part of Teams as well. And then putting the user experience in center. I'm not saying that you should rebuild this park, but you might want to, you might not want to put up walls here, forcing the user to take the design part. With that, we will move into some of the bonus tips and the end of this presentation. So I often see loads of contents and loads of companies that actually buys contents to add somewhere on their intranet and things like that. But there is actually great content added just in Teams. So by using the help button in the bottom left, you will find this content. And I usually try to tell people like, where do I find help, or where do I find my training, and how do I know what's new, and those kind of things. And it's right in front of them. It's just that they often not press this help button because they think that this is like the magic button that calls support and puts them in danger of talking to someone and having to know exactly what to say when the support agent asks them like, what's your problem? Please hurry up. My SLA is to resolve problems in 30 seconds, so I don't have time for you. But actually, just having this help button in trainings and telling people to use it is a great way of get end user training. You could obviously also take the content in here into your own app that you add on top of the activity bar, so that you have like your company personal application with like Teams tips and tricks, your company's content with regards to how to use Teams and where to find help and those kind of things on the first tabs, for example, and then just adding these topics and trainings and what's new to the rest of that. Also in presentations, especially when you do live events like these, as I started saying, like, add forms to meetings. It's a great tool to actually have in the meetings. So when I do presentations and workshops, especially now with like the COVID, usually when you're in the same room as people, you can just pause and let them talk away and ask them like, what are your thoughts about this? Because you see that they are thinking something. But right now, I don't see any of you, so it's kind of hard to know if you follow or not, or if you like this or not. So by adding forms into the presentations, even if you don't have PowerPoint, just add a PowerPoint with these kind of form links and QR codes into it to have like a red line that you follow during your meetings, to actually collect information and collect thoughts of the attendees is a great way. And obviously everyone that's planned a conference knows this, and at the end there's always like, please fill out the evaluations. But even as a presenter, you should like do maybe not evaluations, but ask the attendees like, what are your thoughts about this? And when you do your personal form, you could just add them to your personal forms, or if you have a team where you have meetings in, just add them to that team to be able to share the collected answers with everyone. And when you press the share button in Forms, you do have some small icons under there where you could get this QR code. And with regards to that, I hope that at least someone try this out. And if you do have an iPhone, you could just open the camera app and move it so that you scan this QR code and it will open up the shared form. And actually, I will check that out if someone is out or not. Oh, no one. Come on. So basically what I did is created a form with regards to this presentation. How many tips did you find useful? What's the best tip so far? What's your best tip? And then when you press share, you can either copy this link and add it to the presentation. And one good thing is if you share content and share presentation, share PowerPoint in Teams, it will be loaded as a web page, and the URLs will then be clickable for the attendees so that they don't have to scan it with their phone, for example. But if you do that, it will mess up the emojis, and your ninja emoji will be shown as a cat or something. So it's kind of weird, and that's why we didn't do it for this presentation and some others. But if you do workshops, for example, over Teams or things like that, it might be good to present as a PowerPoint to be able to have clickable links. And no one actually filled it out. But with that in mind, we are at the end of the presentation. And my name is Tommy Clarke. I work for Altitude 365. You can find me on Twitter at @TommyClarke, or use my team's address tommy.clarke@altitude365.com to get a copy of the presentation. With that, there's also a raffle where the conference is handing out 3 Oculus Quests, and you will find that at bit.ly/M365 raffle. And please also consider donating to the following charity relief funds: United Way or International Medical Corps. With that, I will say thank you for this presentation and hope that you have a good day and that you enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.